Hello everyone watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify. It's another episode of NRG Insights. At the moment we're doing our Rising Star series, which is a look into the young people in the industry, how they got in, their kind of journey, their challenges. And I think it's really to help us kind of dinosaurs as well, because I know one of the main pain points we have is that introducing new blood into the industry is always a tough one. So hence the reason for this podcast, hopefully to give these guys a bit of the limelight and also to help us in the way we think about introducing the next people into financial services. So on that note, I've got Chris from Aberdein Considine with me today. Thanks for joining me, Chris.
Yeah, no bother at all. Happy to be here.
Good. So talk to me about your kind of journey into where you are now at so long, Aberdein Considine. I bet you're so used to saying it.
AC, so I've been
AC,
at AC for a few years now, literally 4 years last month. So I've been in financial services since I graduated uni in 2018. So I did, well, long story short is that I actually phoned up one of my brother's pals, and I've always wanted to work in finance. I've always wanted to, I live in Edinburgh at the moment, I'm from Aberdeen originally, and I phoned him up and basically was like, you work in financial services, what is it that you do? He says, well, I run a team of brokers, and he explained what that was. I was like, great, sign me up. So started off at one of the mortgage advice bureau sort of firms, one from their network. Did admin work and telephony work for a year, basically while I did the exams. It was a training program. It was really good. Got a really strong footing. Became an advisor at that point. Worked in new build for a bit, and then moved to Aberdein Considine about 4 years ago, which is more of a branch model. So
were you one of the in the big? Were you in one of the big MAB like call centre type ones you got up there?
a wee bit, yeah. So it was
Like
Clear Mortgage Solutions that I was at. Dom Taddy was the director.
Oh,
So
okay, yeah, no, it's fine.
yeah, it was really good. It was a really good. The training program there was great. Greg, who actually I work with at the moment, created that alongside Darren Poulsen, who's also here now, which was really good. So, and it gave you. It was quite fast. You got chucked in at the deep end, which is great. You were allowed to make mistakes, which is pretty important. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But yeah, it was quite fast, which was good.
I'll tell you what I will say about the Scottish market, which we do a fair bit in, is that because of the lack of candidates, they have got an exceptional way of getting people through into the system. I think it becomes because there's such a need, right? So you kind of have to train people properly. You have to get people through. You have to start from the beginning. Whereas I think, obviously, we do a lot of work in the city, down here and in London, and maybe we don't concentrate as much on training as they do up there because there maybe isn't the need for it. So I think the necessity has produced some really good Scottish brokers. Did you find that going through?
Absolutely. I think the development's key. I think a lot of people, they need that foot in the door to start off with, but they develop from there. One of the big things is that there's, like you say, there's opportunities. And that's one of the hard parts. I talked to a lot of brokers down south, and they're like, yeah, it's great. There's options there, but you're fighting with 10, 15 other people for the same position, whereas up here, we'll get you in the door. It's up to you to then prove yourself, but there will be opportunities for you down the line, which is kind of what happened with me as well.
Yeah. So carry on. I jumped in the middle. So
No.
so at that new build, and obviously you met people there, and then that's kind of culminated into where you are at AC now. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so funnily enough, Greg, who was one of the operations director at Clear, moved to Aberdein Considine, and then about 6, 7, 8 months after that, he was hiring, and I just applied because I knew him pretty well, and yeah, I like the branch model side of things. I like working within quite a big firm. We do loads of things here, property, legal, financials, the headlines. So it's good to get different sides of the business as well, which I would recommend that to people. Look at the solicitor side of things, look at the legal and the property side of things too.
I was going to say, because you work in it is a law and property firm as well. Do you find that's beneficial to you? You kind of get a deeper understanding of the industry as a whole.
Absolutely, you get forced into it. So, when I started out before, it was almost, get the mortgage done, pass it on to the solicitor, it's out your hands type thing, where it shouldn't be that. You should take responsibility the whole way through and work it through. So it's great to kind of have that communication with solicitors, estate agents, and understand that. But it also means that you're doing better for the clients as well. Because if you can actually know what you're talking about rather than saying, oh, I think you should ask your solicitor because I'm not quite sure. You can say, look, you should ask your solicitor anyway. However, here's my understanding of it. It makes life a lot easier, and it builds rapport with them as well and investment with them.
Yeah, 100%. And it also it builds up your gravitas with clients as well. Like you get the whole journey. And I know I say this, and if anyone listens to this regularly, it feels like I'm banging the same drum. But someone said it to me, and it's so true. If we all knew everyone else's journey in the process from like broker, developer, underwriter, solicitor, you know, all the way down, we would have so much more, we'd have so much more respect for how hard it is to get a lead, how hard it is for a lawyer, how hard it is for a broker to get that client, how hard it is for the client when it doesn't go through. If we all understood that journey better, we'd do so much more for the customer, and also we'd respect each other's jobs so much more, because, you know, everyone has the hardest job, right? But yeah. It's when they do that with you, they give you that understanding. Whereas if you were in one of those bang, bang, bang call center, like you say, new build, like why can't you do it in this time frame? You don't really understand either other or the other ends of the journey, do you? So I think it's really important that people get that and give people the exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the main things about that is respect's really key, because it is easy to pass blame almost onto other people. You know, like, I've done my job, you know, why can't you do yours? But at the same time, you're going to have challenges one day, and you're going to get people on your back. You know, I've got solicitors phoning me saying, why have you not got this mortgage offer? And I was like, well, you know, we're waiting on the valuation because of X, Y, Z. It's got an EWS1 form, it's got cladding, so...
Yeah, the valuer's fault, it's the lawyer's fault, it's your fault, it's
Exactly.
everyone's.
Yeah. And the clients, you know, clients can be challenging in their own ways, and, you know, I've got a client at the moment who was very challenging. At the end of it, he's like, oh, I'm a bit hard work, so thank you so much for dealing with it and stuff like that. So, you know, everyone's
The ones
got
that don't know it, at least he's self-aware.
Oh, honestly, it made me smile at the end, and he bought me a wee present and that. He's like, yeah, I know I'm difficult. My mum tells me all the time, and I was like, okay, fair enough, mate. But yeah, it's good that way, because, you know, we'll have the same challenges with clients, but, you know, it's the external factors that are completely different for each sort of role, and it's understanding those that are key.
Yeah, good. So let's turn it back to that kind of that rising star thing that we're talking about being young. And I know we talked about this off air, but what do you think the reason is? I know you guys. What I have discovered is doing this rising star thing. It's very difficult to talk about you guys about how hard it is to get in when you're in. So I probably should interview people that aren't in. But what do you think from an inside maybe perspective? What has been the challenges of getting young people into the industry, and what can we do, us on the dinosaur, and what can we do to kind of combat that?
I think it's perception more than anything else. I was saying to you off air as well that my wee brother, he's just graduated from uni, and he's 21 years old. And when I told him, you know, it was a few years ago, you know, I'm going to be a mortgage advisor, he's like, okay. You know, and that was it. He didn't have an understanding of what it was, what it meant, you know, and he was like, you know, and then I explained it to him, he's like, well, that sounds pretty dull, you know, that doesn't sound very exciting. I was like, well, it's because you're not in it, it's because you don't understand it, you don't understand the challenges. You know, me just saying I get bank loans for people, you know, it's
Yeah. And to be fair, if you explain anyone's job in layman's terms, unless you're a fucking stuntman, right, they all sound a bit boring, right? Because we do the same thing day in, day out. But it's not. I mean, you're right, though. It is a perception of people that mortgages isn't that interesting, because you have the perception of the old man, you know, the old grey man who's the mortgage broker thing. But it's very different now, isn't it? But how do we change that, though? How do we change, like, those guys coming out of uni? How do we change their perception, do you think? Or how would it have worked when you were coming out?
I think education is key. I think taking a leap of faith is pretty key as well. So recruitment drives need to go back. I think, you know, I didn't know anything about, you know, the mortgage industry or insurances, protection, things like that. It was very much, I finished uni, I was like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, so let's ask around. So, you know, I kind of did that off my own back, which was fine, but that's not going to be for everyone. Some people might have a rough idea of what they want to do. Like, I knew I wanted to work in finance, my dad did it, and I was very, very keen to do that. It was just what area I wanted to go into. And I was looking at doing, you know, brokering for like the stock market and things like that, and that, you know, was an opportunity for me as well. But I thought this was a bit more grounded, it was a bit more day to day, and it was a bit more client facing. I quite like the client facing aspect. So it's maybe targeting the right people as well, because if you tell a person you'll be talking to clients every day, you'll be doing this, it's active, you know, you'll have your admin days because every job does, but in general you're speaking, you're running, you're building relationships, and there's also a sales aspect to that as well, where you've got to make sure that the client's, number one, got the right product for the mortgage, but also that mortgage is protected, which not a lot of people talk about, and that's I enjoy more than anything.
Always been built into you, because obviously it came from new build protection, is a big part of their business, isn't it? So that's been built into you from day one, because you'd be surprised how many 30, 40, 50-year-old brokers that I speak to now go, we just don't do it because we never were told it, and it's always been a bit of a scary thing for them, but Absolutely. It's so important, right? Especially now, consumer duty, it's legally important.
Oh yeah, it's huge, it's massive, and I think that's one of the perceptions as well that people don't quite get a hold of, is that, you know, now that I've got my mortgage, that's me done. It's like, no, it's not quite like that. So it's my job to convince them, or not convince them, but educate them of why
Yeah.
it is important, and that's quite fun because as long as you know what you're talking about, anything's fun to talk about. If you
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
me about my team won the Scottish Cup last weekend, that was amazing. If you ask me about anything for the last 30 years, I can tell you all misery, but we won on Saturday and that was amazing. I'll tell you all about that, and that's fun for me to talk about because I know about it.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. As long as you're educated, as long as you know, then you can talk about things freely, and that's fun to do. So it's the same with educating younger people as to these are the things you need to learn. They're not hard to learn. You just got to spend a bit of time,
Yeah.
a bit of craft, and then you can
Yeah,
educate
it's
people
hard.
enough
It's
to make
hard to
it work.
explain, like to get passionate about finance when someone doesn't know about it, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, the more you learn about it, the more exciting it becomes, the more complex it becomes, and the more interesting it becomes. But for young people, it's just fun. You know what I mean? It's a difficult one to go. Oh, mortgages are fun. Like it's
it's
difficult
hard.
to show them.
It's hard to get them excited about anything. Again, like
Yeah,
my wee brother's probably going to hear this and chin me for it, but he's the exact same. Like he's like me. He likes football. He likes going out the weekend. He likes having a bit of fun. But if you try and talk to him about anything that's a bit a level above, he's like, well, I'm 21, mate. I've got loads of time to worry about that. And it's like, well, you need to start early. You know what I mean? You need to get
I don't
involved
know. I
now.
was married with a kid then, so I was different. I was paying a lot of rent. Very different,
So you put in
very
the
different
graft
life.
in, Lucas. Aye. But
But yeah, but there is that element as well. I know you're a young person, but your brother is obviously not next generation, the same generation. But there is that sense of like short-term gratification that wins now. Anything that you tell someone takes a long time, people just aren't. They tend to be interested in it. I know you don't probably see it, and I do say this to all the rising stars. But that's the reason you're on the podcast. It's because you do see it. That's the reason why someone's nominated you for it. Is because you're not in the majority of people that go, look, if I do this for 5 years, 10 years, I'll be really good at it. It's that instant gratification kind of generation that we're really struggling with. And I don't know, and it's the same for recruitment. We're really struggling to get people in now because to tell someone, oh, if you work really hard at my job, like for 5 years, bang it out, it does get easier. But not everyone goes, who wants to do that for 5 years?
and it's absolutely I think one of the things as well is that I speak to like my brother's pals who've finished uni and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to walk into an X amount of K job each year and it's going to be great and 3 years I'll be a manager and I'm like, don't think so, mate. It doesn't quite work like that and it's
Yeah.
when I joined I had
Who's,
to.
who's telling them that though? I'm blaming YouTube for everything.
Well, this is
It's
the
not.
thing. Yeah, YouTube, TikToks. It's just anything you see in social media is success. You never see the graph behind it. That's not true. You do occasionally, but you don't see
Yeah,
how
you
much
can't, you
graph is
can't,
behind
no
it.
one's interested in the graft. I think that's the
Yeah,
thing because it is boring. Like you say to someone, "What does it take to run a business?" You go do the same thing consistently, day in day out, and get told to fuck off 100 times, and then sometimes it works, and be resilient. It's boring.
yeah,
But what they want to see is that 60-second TikTok of, me going out for lunch with people every day, and then like a rooftop party and stuff like that. But that comes from 10 years of graft on the phone.
yeah.
But who's going to watch that? It's not interesting, is it?
Well, this is the thing. It's all about building relationships as well. And if you're 21, you've just finished uni, you've got no relationships. You might get, your dad might know someone, and that gets you in the door. That's great, but you've still got to earn that. And you've got to put in your
Yeah.
graft of, I did my year of doing admin and doing the phones and doing my exams while I was doing that, and shadowing and things like that. But the main thing is that you've got to want it. Like there was a guy that was doing the same thing with me at the same time, and I got offered the job immediately as I got my exams because I showed that I worked and I wanted it. Whereas he was just assumed that, oh, if I do this, I'll get it. So he didn't put full effort into it, and that's the biggest mistake you can make because he wasn't learning the same. If you sat me down next to him and just asked me 10 questions, I would get 9 out of 10 and he would maybe get 5. And it's one of those things that's because I cared and I wanted to bother with it. Whereas a lot of people just, they don't. But the thing is, if you get them in and you push them into that area, they will do it. It's just getting them in the first place and giving them the right motivation, but they're just
Yeah,
assumed that it's
I
not.
think it's very poignant what you said then, because again, I'm hearing the same things from all of the same people that I'm speaking to, but it's because you're the best at what you do. That's why you get nominated. But it is about like just doing a bit more, not just thinking, cool, this is me now. I'm going to plod along and I'm going to be a manager in 3 years. Now I'm plod along and I'll own the business and stuff like that. Like it's fucking hard graft to make any money, and I don't think people see it. I think the work ethic side is kind of lost. And like I say, every single person I spoke to said the same thing. Like I just gave a little bit more than others. That's why you're offered the job straight away.
Yeah.
But again, it's very, very hard to explain. And that's not just the generational thing. That's a general thing.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's why there's only so many people that come through the ranks.
Yeah.
Because you are stuck in that, I'll just do this for a bit. I'll do what I've told to do. And why aren't I being promoted when that guy is? because you're not doing any extra.
Well, this is the thing, like this at the moment, this is great and I'm enjoying it. This is probably one of the more fun parts of doing a bit extra, but I didn't need to do this today. I've got a really busy day, you know what I mean?
Oh,
I've
no.
got stuff to do today, but it's building a
Oh, I don't
brand.
want to keep you, Chris. Well, yeah, great exposure.
Think so, this is one of the more fun parts, but you've got to put yourself out there and do that and build that extra. And I've built a relationship with you now, which is great. And people just think that I'll keep my head down, get it done, and then eventually the opportunity will come. It's not quite as easy as that. Maybe an opportunity will come, but it's not the opportunity that you want. You've got to put that extra in. It was funny. I was speaking to my dad the other day, and he was saying to me, "How's your job going?" I was like, "Oh, great." And I'm like, "I'm doing quite a lot of external stuff." And I was mentioning this and some other things. He's like, I just kind of threw it out there as a bit of a joke, saying, "But I'm not getting paid anymore." And he's like, "Well, yeah, that's how it works, mate. That's exactly what happens." It's
You are.
It's hard things.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll get paid, but you don't get paid in the short term. You've got to graft for it first.
No, it's not exactly. It's a short term. Do you know what? Funnily enough, speaking to a 21-year-old manager of a restaurant the other day, incredible, been promoted 5 times, and he said, "But I don't get paid for overtime." And I said, "But you 100% do, because you've been promoted, because you do overtime, and you've been promoted 5 times. You are being paid in the long term through actually doing it." It's the same thing for us, right? We don't get paid. The same thing for me for this. It's great. I love speaking to people, but it's not a paid for thing. But the value you're adding to the industry, much the same as what you're doing now, putting yourself out there, is the thing you get paid for later on. Later on, you'll be a top performer in a brokerage, and all these little things add up. But I think it's really hard to, if you're just talking about pounds and pence, it's hard to explain to someone that isn't prepared to put themselves out there that that's not how you get in front.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Pounds and pence is great, and we all want to earn more money. That's the name of the game. However, money doesn't buy experience, and experience then kind of buys money in a way, because the more that you experience, the more varied people that you talk to. I think that's the thing as well. You need to talk to different people. You can't just do the same thing all the time, because then you're just going to stand still. It is variation. Variety is a spice of life type thing.
So let's go back to those kind of challenges. What kind of advice can you give? Obviously, we touched on the education piece, but what kind of advice could you give outside of that to like hiring managers or are potentially looking for those next superstars? What do you think we should be doing more of other than just educating? What kind of how are we going to entice people in, given that it's a very different generation to what we're used to?
Well, this is the thing. It is very much the days of apps, and if you play Candy Crush, you get an instant win and you get a reward. It is stuff like that where you're just constantly getting fed things. So if you're a manager, you've almost got to do that as well. And encouragement's great, and you can help people like that. But what you've got to do is say, look, if you come work with me, this is what you get in 2 months. This is what you get in 6 months. This is what you get in a year. This is what you get in 5 years. Because if you just say to them, "Oh, if you work really hard, at some point you'll get something," that means nothing to them. They're like, "Well, I'll go somewhere else, and it might not be the same opportunity long term, but at least I'm getting something now." So you've got to kind of build in. It doesn't have to be a reward scheme, but it has to be, this is what I'm going to give you in that period of time.
Yeah.
Do
you know what's really interesting? That you've hit the nail on the head there about being very succinct with your career progression, because that is something I do think has changed generationally. In my 20s, I was in commercial finance before the crash, and all I cared about was how much money I could make. And everyone around me, that's all we really cared about, was how much money we could make. And like a management thing wasn't even a thing. We were in a brokerage, big brokerage, and it was just about being top of the leaderboard. Yeah. But now you look at young people about how they want to be rewarded, and I didn't give a shit if no one told me thank you for a whole year. It doesn't bother me, because I wanted to get to 6 figures, and then you're there and you want to get to more. That was my whole thing. But actually, the generation has changed a little bit. That you do need to give a little bit more gratification on the on the little wins and that kind of thing. I do think that's changed, and people need to show that their career is maybe a bit more meaningful than we wanted, because we were talking about cash and what we were going to do with it, as opposed to, not that money isn't important to the next generation, but I think your drivers are probably a little bit different to us in regards to kind of reward and being thanked and that kind of thing. So I think that is something for us to think about on our end as well.
Oh, it's completely. So it's different motivations. Like even when, again, there's about 6-7 year difference between me and my brother, and he was telling me, we went to the same school, and he was telling me how much it changed in that 7 years time, and how pupils were conducting themselves and looked after, and how they were punished as well. We got in trouble, we got a certain thing, and they took that away because that was disheartening the pupils. And I was like, I thought it was quite good, because gave you a slap in the face and told you to move on. But again, different generations see it differently. Like if you look at football as well, football's the best example of how that's changed in even just 10 or 15 years. If a player wasn't playing very much, or wasn't working hard in training, you give him a slap and a kick up the bum, and that's them started. Whereas now you've got to coddle
What can
them
we
a
do
bit,
for
and there's
you?
nothing wrong with that. That's fine because people are different, but
Yeah,
people need to
that's the
learn
whole
as well.
point, isn't it? It's the management that has to change because
Yeah,
we're not going to change the next generation. So
yeah,
we have to think.
absolutely.
It'll be great because I speak to so many managers who are like, I just want 10 of me. And you're like, well, they're dead, because they're doing
Yeah,
our job and they're not sat on the phone anymore. You're not making 100 calls a day anymore, so you don't want that.
yeah,
But yes, I think it's a very, very good point. Is that we're not going to change the next generation, so we have to think about how we're rewarding and how we're kind of giving benefits. Because if money isn't everything now, let's have a look at what we can change. Because, like
yeah.
you say, management doesn't work anymore. If you scream and shout at them like a football analogy, then they'll stop playing. You can't then just decide, well, I'm going to do it to everyone until they all start playing because they won't.
Yeah,
You've got to
exactly.
look at
But then
from the
that's you
top
out the
down.
job. That's the manager getting punted because he's not learning, or you've got
Yeah.
to manage with what you've got. That's the whole idea of being a manager and a
Hmm.
coach, or however you want to look at it. Is that you've got your team. How are you going to make them the best that they can be as well? I think that's
Yeah.
huge.
I know, yeah, that's right. I mean, that's a really good point because I've always talked about the young guys and what it is and how hard it is to kind of get them in. But actually, the whole point of this is that how do we change?
Hmm.
Because how do we change for the next generation? Because to keep going, well, I just use the stick and then wonder why it's not working. I wonder why your office is a revolving door. We got to start thinking about the carrot a bit more.
Yeah.
Very good point. So if you could give, I've taken you over the time I said I would, but I genuinely, it's been really good talking to you, and some of the stuff is very, things I haven't been brought up yet, so it is refreshing. But if you could give one bit of advice to someone, whether that be something about their skill set or their character or something that you think will help them move forward in financial services, what's the one thing that you think you could, or the one bit of advice you would give to someone to kind of help them on their way?
So I've listened to your previous podcast, and everyone says graft and work, which is absolutely true. But I think there's a bit more to that. I think a lot of people don't know what they want. Like, I didn't know what I wanted when I finished uni. I was like, I did business, and the reason why I did business was because it was varied. It was lots of different things. I can go into anything afterwards. That's what I wanted to do. So I think a lot of people are like that. Some people find themselves and they know exactly what they would want to do, and that's great. But I think people need to actually take chances on things, especially when they're younger. Go into a brokerage firm or a financial services firm and just say, look, I want to be here, but I'm not sure what I want to do here. Be upfront, be honest, and say, look, so can I try different things? Can I be here for a bit and see what that's like? Be here for a bit. Because worst case scenario, you're there for a couple of years, you've tried 3 different jobs and you've got 3 different types of experience, and then you're like, right, well, now I know what I want to do. It's not a wasted 2 years because you've built up so much info and experience from that. Like,
Yeah,
just me
I love
being on
that.
the
And
phone.
we didn't touch on that as well, but you did do that. You
Yeah.
did the graph at the beginning in regards to the admin and stuff. I think that is important. I think just to understand parts of the business.
Oh, it's
Um,
huge.
I
Yeah,
love
the
that.
phones give you so much confidence. Like, get on the phones, get speaking to people, get speaking to friends, family to start off with. Like, I worked in a pub and that was amazing because you talk about challenging clients. Got to work in a
Yeah,
pub, that's
so
challenging.
you tried to work with Scottish people.
Honestly, I live in a wee town outside Aberdein and speak the Doric, and it's basically like a dialect, and it's hard to understand at the best of times when they're absolutely stupid. So yeah, get out, do things like that, get as much experience as you can, but try different things. It doesn't have to just necessarily be in the financial services industry. It can be, adjacent to that, but as long as it helps build that experience that you can then move into the role, I think that's huge. Just be brave, essentially.
Amazing. Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. And like I said, I really appreciate your time. If anyone wants to get hold of you, Chris, obviously all your socials will be on our socials. But what's the best way of speaking to you if anyone just wants to pick up that conversation again?
Yeah, just give me a phone, pop me an email. So what to do is probably pop me an email first because just appointments. I'm usually pretty busy on the phone. So
Yeah.
email is cgrant, so CGRANT at acandco.com, and we'll get you sorted for anything.
Amazing. Thank you, mate. Again, I appreciate your time. Hopefully you did, everyone listening, especially the people that are hiring young people, take some nuggets out of that. And really appreciate it. And I'll speak to you soon.
Perfect. Cheers, Marcus.
Cheers,
Appreciate it.
mate.
Thanks
Bye
for your
bye.
time.